Up, fam? Listen, I just wanna go right into the text. We're gonna cover a lot today. Um, we're in Jude and we're starting at verse 10. Um, and I'm gonna call this communication "Contend for the Faith Against False Teachers." Contend for the faith against false teachers. I pray that the Lord would help all of us see his word, read his word, meditate on his word, and come closer and closer to him, that we would all come to Jesus, that we would all become more intimate with the Spirit who is in us and who's empowering us to live for the Lord. All right, so I'm going to start at verse 10. And this is what verse 10 says. But these people, and these people that we're talking about are the false teachers who are perverting the grace of God, who are living lustfully, who reject authority, who defile the flesh, and who blaspheme the glorious ones. Remember, last week I said the glorious ones may be either angelic authorities or human authorities, and you could fall either way on that. But the overwhelming teaching of the New Testament is that that these are people that are rebellious, right? So they're just rebellious, and that could be over any kind of authority. And verse 10 again says, but these people blaspheme all that they do not understand, and they're destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively. All right, and so I'm going to stop right there at verse 10. I want to simplify this. When it says these people blaspheme all that they do not understand. Remember, we're coming right off of where Jude tells us that Michael, when he was disputing with the devil over the body of Moses, instead of Michael rebuking Moses in his own name and in his own power, instead, Michael doesn't speak against angelic authorities like he's the boss. He says, the Lord rebuke you to the devil. And here he continues in this thought that these false teachers blaspheme all that they do not understand, meaning they talk as if they own the universe. They talk as if they own the spiritual realm. And you and I have seen a lot of that in our day and age. Charlatans, people who walk around boasting about their exploits against the spiritual realm, boasting as if they have some kind of authority of their own against the spiritual realm. And so these are those that blaspheme what they don't understand. And it says also that they're destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively. So, number one, they don't understand the spiritual realm. But number two, they're destroyed and fall under the destruction of their own instincts because they live like animals. They're driven by instinct as though they're unreasoning animals. And so that's what verse 10 says about them. 11 says, woe to them, for they walk in the way of Cain and abandon themselves for the sake of gain to Balaam's error. And they perished in Korah's rebellion. Whoa. So Cain was overtaken by covetousness, envy, hate, and then eventually murder, right? Again, murder is more like an outward symptom of what was happening in Cain's heart. Covetousness, envy, hate, jealousy is what led to Cain's murder of his brother Abel. And so these false teachers, they have a heart of covetousness. They have a heart of envy. They have a heart of jealousy, and always wanting stuff, always wanting stuff. And then Jude goes on to say they abandoned themselves for the sake of gain to Balaam's error. Balaam's error was that he wanted stuff. He wanted to accumulate the things of the world. And then they perished in Korah's rebellion. Korah's rebellion, man, if you read Numbers 16, and be reminded of the envy, the covetousness, the jealousy that the sons of Korah are Levites. They're priests unto God. And they were given a special portion as those who represent God before the people, and who represent the people before the Lord. And yet they had an envy and a covetousness and a jealousy towards Moses and Aaron that could not be quenched. And so these are descriptive of false teachers. They're covetousness, they're envious, they're jealous, they desire gain, and they would give them over to the sin of pursuing gain. And eventually they're driven by jealousy and wanting a position that's more than what the Lord has given them already. And so these are descriptive of false teachers. And like I said already, prevalent in our day and age. The first thing that comes to mind are the prosperity teachers. Covetousness. They've taught people to love the very thing that Jesus says will destroy their soul. Money, mammon, earthly gain, earthly wealth, the world. And then verse 12 goes on to say that they are hidden reefs at your love feasts, as they feast with you without fear, shepherds feeding themselves, waterless clouds, listen to these words, swept along by winds, fruitless trees in late autumn, twice dead, uprooted. Listen to the language of Jude. He says they're hidden reefs. Hidden among you. I think of something that Brother Norm always talks about. It's like reminding us of the time where the Lord is saying, you don't have to remove the tares and the wheat. That'll come in the end. When the angels of the Lord and the Son of Man separate them in the end. So they're here among us, hiding among us, hiding at our love feasts. They're hiding in church. They're hiding in the gathering of the saints. They're hiding among us. And they feast without fear. So there's some arrogance in them. They sit around knowing that they're not really following Jesus, but they sit around as if they belong. Tares among the wheat, shepherds feeding themselves. What is a shepherd's charge from Jesus? Think about the charge that Jesus made to Peter when he was restoring him. Jesus said to Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" Peter says, "You know I love you, Lord." Jesus' response was, "Then feed my lambs, feed my sheep." These guys have completely bailed on the responsibility of feeding others, feeding the sheep. Why? They're feeding themselves. They're getting fat and happy and sloppy and obese at the expense of people that they're supposed to care for. Again, you see it in the prosperity teachers. You see it in these guys who own $60 million Lear jets, whatever it is, the kind of things I mean, the ridiculous amounts of money they accumulate on the backs of hardworking people, on the backs of people that they're deceiving. I see this thing in Samoa, in my country, where the pastor, he has the nicest house, he has the best cars, and a lot of the old folks who really have no income, they're walking to church on their bare feet, over the gravel. So these are shepherds feeding themselves, and then it says they're waterless clouds. They're waterless clouds, clouds that have no water, clouds that have no refreshing quality, clouds that have no redemptive quality, clouds that have no productive quality about them. Why? Because there's no water, there's no rain coming. There's no rain. All it does is block people from the common grace of God that comes through sunshine. And yet they give nothing. They give nothing back to the people. They're waterless clouds. And then verse 12 says they're swept along by winds. They're just tossed to and fro, like by the winds of change, the winds of the culture, the winds of society's worldview, society's pressures, society's ills. They're tossed to and fro. They're always running after the pattern of the world. I really love something that Pastor Brent has been instilling in us as a staff since the beginning of this whole stay-at-home measure. He's reminded us, even as a church, you might remember him saying this at the very beginning of the COVID episode. Our approach to this is going to be calm. Calm. Our pastoral approach to this is going to be calm. We're not going to be fretting. We're not going to be jumping on this bandwagon and jumping on this news narrative. Why? Because calm is how Jesus would have responded. Calm. Calm is what people need. Stability is what people need. And these false teachers are unstable, always running, always following a false narrative, always following a trend. Jesus came to bring calm. To bring calm. And then another thing it says that they're fruitless trees in late autumn. Fruitless trees in late autumn. Late autumn. I love to believe that Jude is talking about the process. What does a year's seasons look like, right? We have winter, spring, summer, autumn. And then autumn goes into winter, right? So winter is like the end. The winter is near the death of a person. Autumn is near the end. So you've lived your lives for so long representing Jesus, and you've brought no fruit. All this time, and no real spiritual fruit. You're barren. False teachers are barren spiritually, barren. They have barren in terms of their stability. They're barren in terms of their foundational. They're not stable. They're barren. They have no fruit to show for themselves. Man, Jude is really bringing it to bear. And he says they're twice dead, uprooted. Number one, they have no new birth. So they're dead already. They're dead in their trespasses and sins. But also, they're a fake and a phony. So they're dead and dead, I believe, is what Jude is saying. And you're going to say they're dead spiritually already, so they're also going to experience the second death. And that's, man, those are some indictments that Jude is bringing on them. Uprooted was the last thing he says in verse 12. And these are some strong descriptions. And like I said, they're very descriptive of a prevalent personality and a prevalent spirit in the age of the church today. It wasn't just happening back then, it's today. And it was 50 years ago and 100 years ago. There's nothing new under the sun. And so these charlatans have always been among God's people. And Jude is telling us to be careful of them. He goes on in verse 13 to say, wild waves of the sea, casting up the foam of their own shame, wandering stars for whom the gloom of utter darkness has been reserved forever. You guys, these are some crazy descriptions. Crazy yet true. Crazy yet true. It's talking about the character of a person who's lying to people about Jesus, lying to people about the gospel, lying to people about the things of God. A.W. Tozer says, what is a false teacher? A false teacher is one that teaches the things of Christ as if they are not, and they're teaching the things that are not of Christ as if they are. Let me say that again. Someone who teaches the things of Christ as if they are not, and someone who teaches the things that are not of Christ as if they are. That's a false teacher. And look at these words, wild waves of the sea, unbridled, no self-control. Wild waves of the sea. Often in antiquities, the sea is used in literature as referring to darkness, as referring to calamity, as referring to destruction and instability. So Jude calls them wild waves of the sea. Wild waves, unbridled, no self-control, and they're of the sea. They're already of the darkness, casting up the foam of their own shame. Just like the sea when it rolls and when waves break, this is talking about the foam that you see on the ocean. The evidence of these false teachers is the foam, the destruction left in their wake. The destruction, the destructive nature of the teachings they teach, and the destructive nature of the way that they live. It's their own shame. They teach shamefully and they live shamefully. Wandering stars. Falling stars. Let's say that. Falling stars. Falling stars, they'll eventually burn out into nothing. They'll eventually burn out into nothingness. We know the only stars that we know that move are falling stars, right? And from the perspective of a human being who hasn't understood astronomy, all we know that is a moving star is something, and I'm talking from the perspective of Jude and the first century reader. A moving star is a star that fizzes out and just turns into nothing, turns into darkness. And Jude says, these are wandering stars for whom the gloom of utter darkness has been reserved forever. God takes very seriously when people blaspheme his name and teach falsehoods about him. And then verse 14 says, it was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his holy ones, to execute judgment, 15, on all, and to convict all the ungodly of their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him. That's the Lord, right? And then the last verse we're looking at today says this, these are grumblers, malcontent, following their own sinful desires. They are foul-mouthed boasters, showing favoritism to gain advantage. Man, if you want a description of what false teachers are, Jude just lays it out all the way out here. And the thing is, what Jude is saying is that God will judge them for all their ungodly deeds. God will judge them for all their ungodly deeds. But listen to this. God will also judge them for all their false, blasphemous teachings that lack reverence for the Lord. It says like and of all, he will judge them of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against the Lord. So it's not only their actions, but the things they say that will be judged. And how do I know it's about what they say? Look at the next verse. It's all about what comes out of your mouth. What comes out of your mouth. Verse 16 gives a description one more time of false teachers that were hiding among believers during the first part, the early part of church in the first century. Verse 16 says, these are grumblers, complainers, scoffers, mockers, grumblers, murmuring all the time. These are malcontents, people who have found no contentment in God. They pursue contentment in other things, and nothing, I tell you, will satisfy your soul. Nothing on God's green earth will really give people the true soul satisfaction they're looking for. They're always discontented by the things they pursue. The other thing it says, they always follow their own sinful desires. They're self-willed and they're self-fulfilled. Self-willed and self-fulfilled. They're loud-mouthed boasters. Loud-mouthed boasters. Again, starting off with those who blaspheme the things they don't understand. They walk around the earth as though they're the boss of the universe. And even Jesus, who actually was the boss of the universe, in the Passion Week, he didn't conduct himself like that. And the text of 1 Peter actually says that he continued to submit himself to a faithful shepherd. So these are loud-mouthed boasters. Watch the way that a preacher preaches. Watch the way that he talks about spiritual things. And you can tell. You can tell. If he walks around the stage rebuking with an attitude as though he owns the universe, that's a sign. That's a serious sign. And the last thing that verse 16 says, they show favoritism to gain advantage. And here again is, the issue of gain, the issue of desire. A false teacher's angle is always gain. Gain. While Jesus gains by laying down, false teachers don't know how to lay down. All they want to do is take. And so I hope this Bible study has reminded you that listen, we can't just take for granted that people are actually followers of Jesus because they get up on a video and teach the Bible. If what they're teaching about the gospel is not right, flee. If what they're teaching about how to live as a Christian is not right, according to the Word of God, flee. If what they're teaching about God and their attitude about the things of the Spirit are not consistent with His book, flee. So my reminder again for all of us today is to contend for the faith against false teachers. We're going to wrap Jude up next week. I hope the Lord blesses you and keeps you. I hope the Lord causes his face to shine upon you and give you peace. See ya.